Great. Yeah, I want to start by thanking the organizers by putting together this conference. It was super interesting today. I learned a lot of new things, and it's very exciting to be able to be here to present my work. I'm Ekaterina Oparina. I'm going to be talking about feeling good by doing good, in particular about the effect of sports and volunteering on well-being and social outcomes. And this is a joint work together with my two colleagues, Marie Gottefan and Christian Krekel. This is a largely work in progress. This is the first time we present it. So if you have any feedback, comments, or concerns, questions, or suggestions, please do share with me now, after, during the break, via email, or in any possible way. If you want to ask questions along the way, also please feel free to do that. I'm happy to repeat it to the microphone so that it gets recorded. So whatever feedback channel you choose, please use it. And before moving, so I'm going to be largely talking about sports and volunteering, but before moving in this rather narrow topic, I want to start with a broader context of social prescribing. And social prescribing is an approach to healthcare where health professionals can direct their individuals to non-clinical services, which are largely community-based, with an idea that the participation in those activities by those services will improve their health and well-being. And it is basically a lifestyle interventions like healthy eating or spending time in nature, in green spaces or blue spaces. It's volunteering, doing sports, visiting arts exhibitions, and so on. And the key features of this approach is that it goes beyond biomedical model of health, or which largely treats health outcomes as the results of some biological processes, and gets closer to addressing social determinants of health. And I don't think that we need a reference for social determinants of health, but just in case, I put the WHO Commission of 2008 report on social determinants of health. And in the UK, currently, this is one of the key components of the Universal Personalised Care healthcare of the National Health Service. And as a term, it got popularized in the UK, the social prescribing, but it is now widely spread. You can see the map here, 17 countries around the world do have some sort of social prescribing programs institutionalized in their healthcare framework. And it has several very important features. For example, it allows the individual to have more control over the way they are treated. So they can co-design the treatment and be a part of co-production in a sense that their opinion is more important in what works for them. It is a sort of holistic approach that treats health as a part of life rather than something that happens in the hospital, independent on the life on the other parts of the day. It also is supposed to lead to the reduction of healthcare costs, largely because of the decrease in the demand for healthcare services. And this approach is reasonably new. This is not to say that general practitioners did not advise people before to choose a healthy diet and to go walk outdoors, but as an institutional approach, this is rather new. And the evidence of this effectiveness are still emerging. And we believe that a large part of that evidence is not going to be coming from the governmental health services because of the new introduction and data limitations. And I'm saying that because we're trying to evaluate that in the UK with National Health Service. And this seems to be rather complicated. But there is another large source of evidence that comes from community groups and local charities, which have been doing work like that for a very long time. And they hold a lot of information about what does and does not work in what particular context. Is everything fine online? Good. So I have some problems with great. Yes, thank you. So this is exactly what we're going to do. We are going to gather information from the UK charity, which encourages its participants to run, walk, and cycle to help local community organizations and isolated older people by doing practical tasks, which, as you could see in the title of the talk, is combining sports and volunteering. So we partnered with these organizations. I'm going to talk about it a bit more in a second. And we survey their participants on a battery of health, mental health, well-being, and social outcomes. which I'm going to talk more about in a minute. We then exploit the variation in participation. So we know people who participated, we know people who have not yet participated, but engaged in the interaction with the charity, and we compare their well-being outcomes. Obviously, we have an issue of self-selection, because we know that as in these type of activities, people who volunteer can be systematically different from those who don't volunteer. People who do sports can be systematically different from those who don't engage in exercises. So we do a bit of work to try to control that self-selection. And the main approach that we have is that we know whether these people whom we survey engage in volunteering or sports elsewhere, which allows us to control for a part of self-selection, but not all of it. And I'm being a bit cryptic here, but I'm going to have a slide separately on that to give you more details about how it works. We then test how our findings are threatened by further selection of unobservables. We have some encouraging results from there, which I'm also going to talk about in a moment. We find the effect on life satisfaction to be 0.6 on a 0 to 10 scale, which is large, but we also see that it fades over time as we would expect it. So people who haven't participated in more than 6 months, we see the effect is much lower and the standard deviation goes much higher. So we lose statistical significance here. So we see that the effect spikes and then fades away. So what we can conclude from here is that combining these two seemingly different activities seem to have additional benefits on the top of doing one activity independently. And we are looking in investigating what sort of an optimal mix between sports and volunteering and navigating in that context. So this was a helicopter view of what I'm going to be talking about in the next 20 minutes. So now let me go into this in more details. So this is the organization which I was talking about. It's called The Good Gym. And they have a rather radical statement on their website that says that we think that gyms are a waste of energy. There are many neglected tasks and people in our communities that need that energy. We want to bring these things together. They are doing it through 2008. If you're looking for something really inspiring, check their website. They're fantastic, honestly. They are doing this since 2008. They have 25,000 participants since then, so not all of them are active currently. They call them good gymmers, so they are avoiding the word volunteering because it has various aspects to it. So to make it more neutral, they call their participants good gymmers. They operate in 60 areas in the UK. They so far helped 42,000 people with over 300,000 tasks. So they're really, really big organization. And we surveyed their participants. We did it in February and March this year. So the participants got an email like that outlining that Good Gym is now partnering with the London School of Economics, and we would want to survey them about how they feel and promising that they can win a £50 voucher. We send an email and 2 reminders, and our final data set includes 1,500 people, which is 7% of everybody who ever participated since 2009. So it's much larger share of those who participated in the last year, but it doesn't feel completely fair to compare with those who participated in the last year because part of the group have not yet participated. So we put this super conservative number of 7% of people who ever had any interaction with the organization. And we collect a series of characteristics, including age, gender, education, ethnicity, marital employment status, number of children, religion, and income. And on top of that, we collect information on whether the respondents participate in sports and volunteering elsewhere beyond the Good Gym organization. The main outcome that I'm going to be talking about is life satisfaction measured on the 0 to 10 scale. Very nothing unusual here. We also have a battery of other outcomes, including mental distress, worthwhileness, loneliness, belonging, connectedness, and trust, both in the local area and people in general. I'm going to come back to these outcomes at the very end of the presentation, but I just want to walk through life satisfaction to show you how the identification works. And then I'm going to show you all the results all together, because they do seem to react slightly differently. We're interested in two things. We're interested how much participating in this sort of activities affect well-being and social outcomes. So for that, before controlling for self-selection, we're just going to be comparing those who participated and those who have not participated. So as a reminder, all of these people, they self-selected in participating in this organization in the first place. So they're members of this UK charity. And then we also want to understand how long the effect persists. And for that purpose, I'm going to be comparing those who participated more than 6 months ago with those who participated less than 6 months ago. And this is the obvious concern about self-selection, and the part which I was particularly cryptic about the channels. So we proxy for unobserved heterogeneity by controlling for participation in sports and volunteering elsewhere beyond this organization. To be a little more convincing here, we check that the gains from sports and volunteering with respect to well-being in our sample are similar to those in the UK National Representative UKHLS Understanding Society. And they do look broadly in line. And then what we can do by controlling for this participation is that we can control for all the characteristics that are associated both with the propensity to do sports and with life satisfaction. For example, health. So we know that people who are healthier are more likely to do sports. They're also likely to be happier. We also can do that for the characteristics that are related to the propensity to volunteer in life satisfaction, which is, for example, extroversion. So we know that extroverted people are more likely to volunteer and also are more likely to report high life satisfaction. So these are the channels that we can capture. The part of the channels which we cannot capture is the fact that people who participate in this sort of mixed activity might have other features beyond those related with volunteering in sports. They might like innovation. There is nothing in our data set that allows us to understand how much innovation they like. And here there might be an endless list of characteristics that can be related to both, and we're not able to control for them. So what we do instead is we use this approach from Oster 2019 when we check how our results are sensitive to the further selection of unobservables. And when I'm going to be showing you the results, I'm going to show you how that works, but it looks encouraging. So these are the results. 4 columns here. The first one has no controls. So let's focus at the top of the table, which is the effect, the magnitude of the effect, those who participated compared to those who never participated. No controls in the first column, exogenous characteristics in the second, all individual controls, including religious education, working status, and so on in the third one. And the last one includes proxy for unobservables. So those are the participations. So as you can see, the coefficient estimates moves to the direction we would be expecting it to move. However, the coefficient still stays higher than we expected. But if we look at this is not 12, more than 6 months, the coefficient goes down with a much larger confidence interval. I'm going to briefly talk about the effect fading. So here when we compare those who participated in the last 6 months, those who participated longer ago, we see that we observe a large and statistically significant effect fading. So it does look like that any effect that we're getting, it disappears with time, which is also something that we would expect. So this coefficient, which I discussed before, now in a red bracket, 0.5 on a 0 to 5 scale, we test how much it is sensitive to the selection of further selection of unobservables. So the way the OSTER 2019 methodology works is that it allows us to understand what degree we have. We observe the selection of on observables by including new observables in the model. And this approach allows us to identify how large there should be the selection of unobservables that we haven't included to eliminate our coefficient. What we get is the 0.7 estimate, which is approximately the median in the econ papers which are surveyed in the original OSTER 2019 paper. So it is, and we interpret it as an encouraging finding. This was sort of our desperate attempt to leverage further our observable characteristics, and we tried to figure out maybe there is some combination of observable characteristics that are going to increase this the amount of selection that we capture. And we ran a causal forest with all our variables. There are too few observations, so it's very unstable. I'm not going to report the results here, but it did pick on several variables, which we included all the interactions of those in the model, and the results stay in place. And this is all. So the previous results that I showed you were on the 0 to 10 scale. Now, to make all of them comparable, these are all standardized, and life satisfaction is in red. And we generally can separate them in three broad groups. We have high effect, high fading, mental health, life satisfaction, belonging, connectedness. We have high effect, low fading, worthwhileness, and loneliness, which could either mean that this intervention has long-lasting effect, or that we are doing particularly bad job here on selecting on unobservables. So I'm a bit cautious of interpreting this. And there is trust, which surprisingly for us, we found very low or non-existent effect. Though I discussed it with Mark recently, and he said that he also had the same experience in volunteering and people's trust affected by volunteering. So I'm a bit encouraged for that about that, but we would need to do further understanding of because we would expect, since all the activities are locally based, we would expect larger effect on trust. And this is what I'm going to conclude. So it does look like this non-standard mixed activities have further benefit above and beyond engagement in individual activities, which probably indicates that there is a large space for experimentation in social prescribing. And we encourage anyone who have access to the organizations who have already been doing that to leverage on that information, because they seem to be holding a lot of important knowledge, because they also came to this particular combination through experimentation. So it looks like there is a lot we can learn from them. And on our side, we are now retrieving information on the particular tasks that people were doing, which could be gardening in a communal garden, or helping to move furniture, somebody who's unable to do it themselves. So they have different combinations of sports and volunteering, and we're interested in understanding how they combine well together. We're looking into motivations of the participants to find out what is it that particularly resonates. Are there any particular motivations that make people resonate well? And so, of course, endogeneity is our biggest concern. We have a second wave of data collection, so we hope to have further outcomes for those who did not participate in our first survey, which we're going to use to hopefully confirm our findings or correct them in some way. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Ekaterina, for the presentation. I was thinking that it could be possible maybe to do another treatment. So maybe you can decompose the treatment, having information on the intensity of the participation, because I guess that it's different members that just participate one time, so one shot, no? And then I feel good that members that have actually and consistently participate a lot. So I think that then you can have two kinds of two different treatments and compare it with the control group, and also between them. I think that this could be also another thing that you could explore.
Thank you very much. That is a very good point. We have a bit of a limited number of observations, but I guess we can split it in high and low, and that would give us enough. For that, we definitely have enough observations. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you for the presentation. Participating in a survey is a form of volunteering, and the answer rate is around 7%, if I recall correctly. Do you think this may help to explain the strange behavior of volunteering?
Hi, mine is more of a clarification rather than a question. Do you know your metric on worthwhileness? Is that the question whether you think the things you do in life are worthwhile?
Yes.
Yeah. My clarification is that you're surprised that the effect doesn't decline as quickly in worthwhile as it does compared to LifeStat. I'm from the Office for National Statistics in the UK. I am not as surprised by that finding because we know the question on whether you think the things you do in life are worthwhile correlates fractionally differently with other things. So for example, it doesn't correlate as well with income. So the fact that you're actually participating in volunteering will make you think that the things you do in life are more worthwhile, and therefore it wouldn't surprise me that it has a longer effect than it does on something like life satisfaction, where you're evaluating over everything you're doing, whereas worthwhile is literally the activities that you're partaking in, and this is a particularly worthwhile activity.
Thank you.
That's okay.
So I'm gonna take the first question then first. So thank you.
have
Yes.
another question.
Sorry. Okay. On serving, yes, of course, you're absolutely right. People who self-select to be surveyed are different from people who do not self-select to be surveyed. But there are two defenses that I have about that. First is that we compare people who were surveyed with people who were surveyed. So in an extent, if they're in any way different from everybody else, they are still similar across each other. And secondly, we do compare, so the returns on sports and volunteering independently, we compare that with the national representative sample. So they're reasonably similar. It doesn't seem that our sample is particularly strange. It's not representative as it's more female than average, slightly younger, slightly richer. But it looks like on these correlations that we usually look at, they represent reasonably well the general population. And thank you very much for the comment on worthwhileness question. That sounds very encouraging. Yeah, maybe we can talk a bit more about it later. Thank you.
Yes, fast. I know it's more, I was just thinking if you consider to do some sort of matching to overcome a little bit the self-selection issue that you have, because you haven't done it yet, but maybe you can consider to match on observables.
Yeah, we can try doing that. So this sample size, as you've seen, is reasonably modest. So there is there are obvious limitations of how detailed we can go in propensity matching. But thanks, we'll experiment with that.